with another system back to the west, and that's going to bring us winds gusting over 30 miles per hour tomorrow. We have flood alerts across the eastern part of the state. You can see that flood watch that's in effect here for East Alabama, and that is going to include areas along and east of Interstate 65. As we go first off to show you the latest with the hurricane, you can see that the center now, it's we just actually updated this. It's about 110 miles. You can see I updated the measuring tool there. It's about 110 miles from Perry, Florida. Areas to the south of that city there around the peninsula of Florida, around Tampa, already tornado warnings, and look at those winds around 60 miles per hour. And with a Cat 4, could have winds around 130 as this thing moves on shore. Already been seeing some rain, and actually this is pretty much where the rain's going to set up tonight. We'll see the western edge of this closer to I-65. Not a lot of wet weather. It's going to be lighter here further west you go, but a lot of rain that's showing up here across East Alabama. Some of these showers have been spreading in around Birmingham, and just kind of misty light rain, but it is enough to keep those roadways wet out there tonight. The heavier stuff, though, that's where you see these reds back to the east, and we're telling you about Atlanta. That area right now already under flash flood warnings, so that is going to be a concern as we move through the overnight hours. Right now, I want to go to meteorologist Tania Michelle, and Tania, looking at the flood advisories for tonight and through tomorrow morning, it looks like East Alabama could see 4+ inches of rain still in some of those areas.
Oh yeah, Wes, that's exactly what we're paying attention to. On along I-65 areas further east, and of course further into Georgia. That's where flooding is going to be more of a concern. But not just with the rain, we're going to see those wind gusts topping 30 miles per hour for our eastern counties. And again, rainfall totals exceeding 4 inches. That localized flood threat still stands. Lesser impacts, though, for West Alabama. Few showers, definitely breezy, but you could see wind gusts picking up a little bit more as we head into your Friday afternoon. So here's a quick look at this. Here we are this evening, Thursday, 9 p.m., seeing wind gusts mostly across the area, topping about 20-25 miles per hour. But as we continue, late tonight, starting to pick up just on and along I-65 with wind gusts exceeding 30 miles per hour. But those stronger winds for East Alabama really into your early Friday morning. Here we are at 5 a.m. Wind gusts topping 40 miles per hour. But notice as we approach tomorrow afternoon and even into the late afternoon hours, 3 o'clock, West Alabama actually getting some of those winds topping 40 miles per hour, like in Fayette at 44, 40 mile per hour wind gusts expected there in Pickens County. So if you don't get those strong wind gusts tonight and you're in West Alabama, you still need to be on alert and make sure all those outdoor objects are nice and secure, because you may see those winds picking up by late afternoon Friday. But we're going to bring it back here at home. And you know who's in East Alabama right now. We're joined now with meteorologist Lauren Linehan, who has an update on what they're doing to prepare and what impact she's seeing from Helene, or what we can expect, I should say, later on tonight. Lauren, how's it looking?
Well, Tania, things are really quiet right now here in East Alabama. I was actually just looking at the radar on my phone, and it's like Helene knew we were about to have a live shot, so let the conditions be briefly dry. We're actually in a little dry hole here in Anniston, but thankful for that here in the live shot. Now, we were driving along in Anniston. We're keeping our eyes peeled for any areas that we could be seeing flooding, but we noticed something really interesting as we were driving past the La Quinta and a Holiday Inn Express. I want you to look behind me and see all of these utility trucks that are lined up. We think we have stumbled across this place where the utility trucks have been staged, and they are likely going to be going and deployed to wherever they are needed as those impacts from Helene turn all the more greater as we go into the overnight hours. Now, we've been stressing that this is a fast-moving system, and the problem with Helene being a fast-moving system is it is not going to have time to weaken. You move away from that source of that warm ocean water, and that typically helps the storm to weaken. That's not going to be the case here, though. So that's why we could see impacts well inland. Wouldn't be surprised to potentially see, you think a lot of these utility trucks, okay, they're going to go down to the coast, but they may have to go east, well into inland Georgia, with these widespread power outages expected. But it's really quiet here in Anniston. Anniston is one of the places, though, here in our central Alabama area that we could see impacts. Now, that wind advisory goes into effect at 7 p.m., but I was just checking the data from the Anniston Houston Airport, we still haven't even seen a gust get over 10 miles per hour. So thus far, winds have been sustained about 5 to 10 miles per hour out of the north. Because we are on the west side of the system, that is putting us on the better side of the system, so to speak. But Tania, as you were just mentioning, there's still going to be that low-end flood and wind threat, especially for East Alabama. Areas you go farther west across the state, less. But just very thankful that things seem to be behaving right now. But when we check in a couple of hours, we'll see how those conditions change as Helene moves inland. And we'll be checking in later in Weather Extra as well. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And before Lauren headed to East Alabama, she had the opportunity to speak with Felicia Bowser. She's the meteorologist in charge at the National Weather Service office in Tallahassee. They were able to speak about how the city is preparing for landfall and the impacts Helene is expected to bring to Florida's capital.
So I know with your county warning area with the National Weather Service in Tallahassee, you're not just covering Florida, but you're also covering parts of Alabama and Georgia. How are you all handling all of these threats across the tri-state area?
You're right. We have 5 additional counties in Alabama and 26 counties in Georgia, not to mention the counties that we have here in the Florida Panhandle and Southeast Big Bend. So how are we handling it? With our very talented staff of meteorologists that's here on site, dedicated for our community, and want to make sure that we keep everybody safe. So we're here 24/7 like we always are, but this time we'll be hunkering down here tonight at the office as the system makes landfall later today.
So I know you are based in Tallahassee. What are some of the impacts you all are expecting in Tallahassee, and when was the last time a hurricane of this caliber came through?
So there's several impacts that we're expecting later. Of course, rainfall, heavy rainfall. We've been experiencing that since last night, actually. And we're just going to continue to see that as the system makes landfall and moves across or near the area. Other impacts that we're going to be experiencing and have been experiencing is the chance for tornadoes, isolated tornadoes that usually develops across the eastern flank of a hurricane. And we've had some, especially along the coast, and actually a few across our Georgia counties as those rain bands moves across the area. And with those, and of course, one of the main impacts for sure is going to be the wind threat that's associated with this storm. This storm is very large, and when it makes landfall, even though it's going to be making landfall across the southeast Florida Big Bend somewhere, but because it's a large size, we're going to be feeling these impacts hundreds of miles away. So we definitely like to tell our communities and those that are not close, nearby Tallahassee, that you still need to remain alert and make sure that you get the most updated weather information.
What can people do in these last few hours to prepare?
Well, my hope, and hopefully this did occur, is that people already have their preparations in place since yesterday. Yesterday was the last day to get everything together. So we're probably going to be experiencing some power outages as a result of trees being knocked over and falling on power lines. So we like to tell people, make sure you have some type of light source for your home so that you'll be able to see inside of your home in case we don't have any power. Make sure you have non-perishable foods already in place. Plenty of water, of course, and any medications and batteries, and making sure that you keep your devices charged up so you can get the latest weather information, which is so important. We don't want you to go outside and venture outside if the system is still moving across the area. And of course, stay hunkered down, stay inside. It's going to be very windy. Of course, you have the rain, but those wind conditions is going to get up there. So you're going to have to make sure you stay safe inside.
And even though Helene will be coming in within the next 24 hours, how long could we see impacts from this system last outside of just what damage it brings across the area?
So luckily, this system is moving fairly quickly. So that's definitely something that we're grateful for. This system should be moving out of Florida and into Georgia by late tonight. We're talking about midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday. So around that time, we should actually start to slowly and gradually see things improve from south to north. The rain is going to linger a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit breezy, but it's not going to be nearly as windy as it would be after it makes landfall.
In 30 seconds, we take another quick look at radar as well as take you to our neighbors in Georgia. They're preparing emergency response teams for those impacts from Helene. We'll see you after this. And we are tracking right now Hurricane Helene, and at nightfall, I mean, we're going to be seeing storm surge 15 to 20 feet in that area. Winds gusting could be as high as 130 miles per hour when this makes landfall. But we've been going through a lot of camera views, and we're going to have several more scenes to show you what it looks like there along the coastal areas. Right now, I want to get you over to radar and just show you what's happening at the moment with this. And if we look at the center of the hurricane, the eye, you can see the eye wall with this. The Hurricane Center forecast track actually had it kind of in this area. It looks like it may be going just a little bit to the east, but still it's going to be generally in that Big Bend region. As JP mentioned, a lot of wildlife management areas out here. Some of the more populated areas like Tallahassee will certainly be impacted. Valdosta, already seeing Albany, and in here southern Georgia, some tornado warnings, those outer bands as this lifts to the north. I still think for our area tonight, after this moves in, we'll be on the side. We won't see a threat for tornadoes. That's going to be more of a threat further east of Alabama. But we'll continue to track this right now over to JP. And JP, we're talking about some of the travel conditions across the region. This is going to have far-reaching impacts well into Georgia.
That's right. You're talking about some gusty winds moving across the central part of Georgia. Valdosta, Thomasville, Albany, Georgia, Macon, even winds gusting up to 80 miles per hour, I think, in the Atlanta area. We know what that's going to do to flights and cancellations coming up late tonight and tomorrow. Okay, if you're heading down to the Gulf Coast here, here's what we have. Panama City Beach. This is actually a little bit better side of the storm. This is not going to be ground zero for this hurricane making landfall. Winds gusting 25 miles per hour. Good news for folks that have property there in Panama City or along the Bay County area. 77 degrees right now, the view from Sharky's. Winds again about 25 miles per hour. This is Helene, okay? This is a Category 4 storm. It is moving northward very, very rapidly. If we look at the clock here, landfall probably in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Right there, that Big Bend area of Florida, not too far from Perry, Florida. That's in Taylor County. You can see it quickly moving across the Atlanta metro area, Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia. Greenville, South Carolina may have winds in excess of 64 miles per hour. So tropical threats all the way up through Georgia. What about football forecasts this weekend? Weather is actually going to be improving for tomorrow evening. 72 degrees if you're going to a high school football game. A little breezy out there. I think our stronger winds tomorrow will be between about 11 and 3 p.m. Saturday, Navy and UAB, 11 a.m. game, only a 25 or 20% chance of rain, 75 degrees, very pleasant temperatures. 2:30, it is Oklahoma and Auburn, 80-degree temperature there, partly sunny. And Saturday evening, Georgia and Alabama, the temperature 79 and rain chances very minimal. So largely a cooler and drier weekend. Just remember, tomorrow, be on the alert. Those winds are going to kick in again, probably the middle of the day. It could be a little windy coming up tomorrow than actually what we'll experience tonight. Tania?
Well, JP, thank you for that. Governor Brian Kemp declaring a state of emergency in Georgia, meaning that 500 National Guardsmen and women are ready to deploy where they're needed. He's also directed the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency to activate the State Operations Center. Heavy rain, strong winds, and power outages are expected for the entire state, with Georgia Power already reporting outages. GEMA Director Chris Stallings says they're projecting mass power outages unlike what Georgia has experienced before.
Those winds are going to be blowing against trees that are going to have either exposed roots or roots that are in saturated ground. They're not going to have the strength to hold like they normally would. So when those trees start to topple, they take lines down with them. And I think we're going to see some significant power outages, probably nothing like we've seen.
Well, still ahead, we're going to take another check back in East Alabama with meteorologist Lauren Linehan, but we're also going to talk about what we're experiencing for the weekend and into next week. We'll be right back. You are watching First Alert Weather Extra.
It was on, it wasn't. Cool. I think we're coming up after this commercial break. Man, this light is rough.
All right, everyone, welcome back into First Alert Weather Extra. I'm meteorologist Tania Michelle. We want to take you back to East Alabama, the area that's most susceptible to impacts here across central Alabama from Hurricane Helene. So we're going to check in now with meteorologist Lauren Linehan, who's riding in the storm tracker. Lauren, what updates can you give us?
Well, Tania, the weather's still really dry where we are. We actually got back into the storm tracker. We had seen those storm trucks or those utility trucks that were stationed at two of the hotels in Anniston. We're now headed east on I-20 to get us a little closer to Heflin, closer to where we're seeing some rain on radar. I'll try to switch the view here so you can see our view as we're headed east towards I-20. Of course, the much farther east you go, the more you're going to be in that direct path of Helene, and the more devastating, the potential for devastating impacts, especially farther into inland Georgia. We're not going to go all the way across the Georgia state line, but we are going to go farther east and see if we can find a little bit more rain out there. We're looking at a little dry pocket. You guys can probably pull it up on First Alert AccuTrack later, but it is showing that there is more rain to our south. I will note that the winds haven't really picked up yet. We are on the west side, really the northwest side of the circulation right now. So if you think about that counterclockwise circulation around an area of low pressure in the northern hemisphere, it's pulling in that cooler, slightly drier air from the north. And we've also had that low pressure system that came through that you all have been mentioning is going to be be interacting with Helene. So it honestly feels kind of cool outside. And if you didn't know any better, there's just a little bit of a light mist. It's foggy. I said earlier, and you'll know I love my naps, this would be good napping weather. But, you know, we are very fortunate. Even in East Alabama, we have those impacts for some flooding and also the possibility of some gusty winds going into tomorrow. But it's just a very different story for people to the east of us and farther south as well. So we're just counting our blessings here in East Alabama. We'll see within the next couple of hours. We're going to have updates on the late shows tonight on WBRC 6 News. We'll see if the conditions change. I do think there's at least going to be a little bit more of a breeze, and we could be seeing some heavier rainfall in the forecast as well. We, of course, don't want to see any flooding in East Alabama, but one of the concerns that has been across the state line is there's already been plenty of rain that fell from the earlier system that came through, so you just don't want to see that type of inundation. But we'll check back in with you tonight. In the meantime, reporting on the road on I-20, meteorologist Lauren Linehan, WBRC 6 News on your side.
All right, Lauren, great job out there, and we're going to be watching you closely here in East Alabama. How about this view from Gulf Shores? If you're curious what the weather's like there at Orange Beach and Gulf Shores, look how those clouds are just racing offshore. Of course, this is on the western side of it, so we have an offshore flow. You can see all the palms are just kind of leaning back in that direction. So it's going to actually be fantastic weather here, just a little breezy. Of course, it's always breezy there on the coast, but you go further to the east, and there's a live look from schooners. Looks like some folks out there close to that rough water need to be careful. That water, you know, you go further east, the surge is coming in 15, 20 feet there along the Gulf Coast. Oak Grove, Talladega County. This is one location. Sylacauga got some rain falling. We're going to have some heavier rain later on tonight. Could see some winds. You go south of here, you get into Coosa County, over towards Auburn, especially Tallapoosa, Chambers counties. Could see some winds there gusting over 35 miles per hour. So there might be a few random outages. Same goes for Jacksonville. You can see it's really coming down here at JSU right now. 68 degrees, though, cool, rainy, and breezy. Winds only at 6 miles per hour, but once that pressure lowers, that tropical system moves inland and weakens in this direction. You can see all these lines, these represent isobars, and the pressure, as you work towards that center of low pressure, they're dropping off. And when you see those tightly packed like that, that means that we're seeing a strong pressure gradient. So what happens, we talked earlier in the week about that Fujiwara effect, how this kind of gets wrapped into that other system. Well, that next system to our west rotates through, and that's what's going to bring some windy conditions for tomorrow. So it will be windy again. We continue our first alert weather day. Even west Alabama could have some gusty conditions. We'll talk more about the 10-day after the break. Tania, JP, Helene close to landfall, about 100 miles away from the coast.
Yeah, and it is a Category 4 hurricane. This one is serious. Tallahassee, Perry, Florida, Steinhatchee area, all will be impacted here.
Yeah, we're going to be tracking it online. Follow us on our social, on our digital platforms. We'll see you back here at 9. I was